right. I'm here with Meredith Mack, and we are going to be discussing how to build a lean and strong body that's pain-free and doing it in an efficient way so that we can maintain our results for a lifetime. So Meredith is a personal trainer, a muscle activation technique specialist, the co-host of Peach Fitness Podcast, an Instagram influencer with like 220,000 followers, which is amazing. And an IFBB Pro, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, International Federation of Bodybuilding. Is that right?
It is. Mm-hmm. Yes.
How'd you get into that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Into the bodybuilding space.
Yeah. So I did my first competition back in 2009, and it was kind of a little bit of a fluke. I was very hush hush about it. I didn't tell anybody. I just, at that point in my life, was looking for a way to challenge myself and kind of wanted to see what it was all about. And I just happened to be working at a gym where the owner and his wife were sponsoring one of the shows locally. And so I thought, well, let me just try it and see what the process is like. And it was a small show, but I ended up winning. And so it kind of got me a little bit hooked. And I went to the nationals, and it was like the first year that they had the bikini division. And I got second place. So then I was really hooked because I want to win, so, but it was really interesting because it was kind of the first time in my fitness journey where I really had a very clear goal about what I was trying to achieve. And as much as I know this is something that you had sent me a question about, and don't mean to jump the gun, but, yeah. So as much as I don't always think that everybody has to have such a clearly defined or aggressive goal to make progress, that definitely was a place in my life where I recognized the benefit of it.
Yeah, I guess that is a often helpful thing, right? To have a target to aim for, gives you direction.
I think so, but there were before, and there certainly have been since, more broad goals, I don't think everybody can live in that space all the time. I certainly wouldn't want the intensity of training for a competition all the time. It's just not possible. But I think it definitely can, and at the right point in your life, at different points in your life, be that stepping stone, or be that thing that kind of pushes you in a positive way.
Yeah, totally. I can relate to that also. But as we get older and things change, then your goals change and they look more.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you, outside of what you just mentioned, did you always work out? Were you always into exercise? How did it start for you?
Yeah. So I've always been really active. I grew up being very involved in gymnastics and dance and just roller skating, rollerblading. I wanted to be an ice skater when I was little. We didn't have an ice rink in town, so I didn't really get to pursue that. But so yeah, I always had this joy of movement, I guess. And I got really involved and interested in dance when I was in high school, and really wanted that to be the trajectory for my life. And so with that comes an awareness, for sure, of physicality and nutrition, and wanting to kind of fit the mold of what it means to be a dancer, which has its pluses and minuses. And so that kind of took me into nutrition. I ended up majoring in nutrition, and then ended up working at a gym out of college. And I was just at the front desk when I first started, but a lot of my friends were trainers, and that's kind of how I actually got into the training space.
Okay. So what is it about exercise that you find so fascinating? Why are you so passionate about it?
I don't know. I think that there's something for me, and it's what I feel about dance too, is that I don't always love verbally communicating. So it's very nerve-wracking sometimes. I don't always feel like I say exactly the thing that I'm wanting to say. But through movement, I feel a freedom. I feel like I always want to have that freedom, which, for as long as I possibly can. And so that sort of, even on days when I don't necessarily feel like working out or feel like moving, it keeps me in it, even if it's not the same intensity, or, of course, I think people should have rest days and all of that. But I think it's just that it feels so important to me, like so viscerally, like I can move energy through my body. I can, if I'm dealing with something stressful, like it helps me to move. If I'm happy, I want to like dance. So, so it's just so much intertwined with just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking is not, but that's okay.
Well, you speak well from where I'm sitting.
Well, thank you. I'm definitely getting more comfortable. The more we podcast and the more I get a little more comfortable. So
Yeah, it's just like getting exposed to it over and over just helps.
yeah.
For sure. I'm in the same boat. Like it's
Really? Okay, well that's good to know I'm not alone. Yeah,
so
there's definitely, yeah.
there's a big jump between, just loving to move, doing exercise yourself, and then starting to guide people professionally.
Sure, sure. And I mean, that's one of the things that Jen and I have definitely talked about on our podcast is like this, yeah, like I've always had an interest in like anatomy. And again, I think that goes back to like dance and just being interested in how things work in the body. But I think it's kind of crazy sometimes, like, because you can oftentimes just kind of jump into being a trainer. Like there are certifications involved, but I don't think that for a lot of people that start training, I think they kind of get thrown into it a little bit. Like, so at the time, I knew I didn't want to work at the front desk forever. And I also wasn't really interested in going into nutrition. So I took a chance and hoped that it would be like a good career path for me. But it took a long time to kind of like, build up the experience and the knowledge. And you do what you can when you can do it, and you explain things when you can. And certainly I was really lucky to be involved in some programs like MAT and RTS that kind of really bridged a lot of that gap that I think, a lot of trainers could benefit from. But I think the more I learned and the more I worked with people, the more I really found that I really did like this. I just really wanted to do right by them as much as I could. And so I wanted to keep learning because I really wanted to be able to offer them like the best experience they could possibly have with exercise. Because I think that that's, unfortunately why more people don't work out on a regular basis is because they have a really bad taste of what exercise is. So I want to change that for people as best as I can.
Right. Yeah. It's this idea of the chef and the cook, right? Like if you have a memorized recipe that gets you this result, but it doesn't always taste good to everybody. So it's the cook, chef really knows how to make it customized for each person, right? And that is such a big deal for people, especially when they haven't had that rich, positive experience with exercise. I think that's awesome. So, you mentioned movement being such a big thing, and I kind of delineate the difference between movement and resistance training just because there seems to be some specialty differences between the two.
Absolutely.
I guess if you are on the same page with me in that regard, how has resistance training affected your life, and maybe define what resistance training is to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point. And I think it's a really important point. So, I get frustrated sometimes with all of like the little trackers that are available today, because it can give this false impression that as long as you've gotten this number of steps in, you're good. Like you don't need to do anything else. And for me, resistance training is really challenging the body specifically for an individual in an appropriate way, hopefully, that lets them in a steady fashion, consistent practice, continue to be able to control, build, maintain stability throughout the body. So we can move, and that's great and that's wonderful, and we can use resistance from our own bodies, but like I think there's so much more to it than all of that. We have all of these machines and devices at our disposal now that we can use to really create a phenomenal experience for people that hopefully would keep them as strong as possible and as healthy as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah, that's it's so nice now because we have so many options and ways to challenge the body that we maybe didn't have 50 years ago, and
Absolutely.
opens a lot of doors. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that yes, movement's part of it, but if we want to manage our muscle system, the organ system itself, and keep it healthy, we have to make sure we're targeting things in a way that addresses each person's needs.
Yes, absolutely. And challenging people through different ranges. We like if you're gonna go for a walk, like I also don't want to ever discourage anybody. Like you start where you start and you do what you can, but also how can we build upon that? How can we make it so that you can have the strongest, most, capable body for as long as possible?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So what do your workouts look like? How do you structure each workout, or from session to session or month to month? Do you do that, if at all?
So I right now, as I had mentioned to you before, like I'm going through a little bit of a period where I've actually taken some time away from resistance training. So, and I say that with in a formal approach with machines, and I've really put my focus like fully on dance at the moment because both require a significant amount of energy from me. And so I really, in order to like get back and feel like capable and like I'm making progress in the dance space, I really needed to pull back from traditional lifting, which I really love, but find it very challenging to do both well at the same time. And sort of like my thought process is that once I kind of get a little more rooted into my dance stuff, that I will go back and start reintroducing things to see how much I can kind of do both of them at the same time. When I'm lifting, I really love focusing on like a body part at a time. It's very like bodybuilder of me, but like that's how I have structured my workouts pretty much for the last several years. And I just find that I can really focus in on a particular area and feel like really confident and really good about my workout by doing that. It's not that I do that for all of my clients. Everybody has different needs and is at a different place. With even how much time they want to spend in the gym. I mean, that requires, maybe going to the gym 6 days a week and like hitting each thing that I want to hit very well over a 6-day period. So not everybody wants to do that or has the time or the energy or whatever, So yeah, that's kind of how I would structure my workouts typically.
And why is that? Is that mostly because you're centered around trying to build muscle?
Um, if I do that, it's because I'm trying to really maintain the amount of muscle that I have, potentially with building muscle. It's just what I enjoy. It's just the process. Like, it's just how I enjoy doing it. It's not to say that there aren't a number of different ways that somebody might go to the gym and have an awesome workout.
Yeah.
I just really like the focus, and I really like being able to hone in on an area and like really fatigue that area.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, we probably, you as well, have done a wide range of different ways of training, and so we kind of resonate to what feels best. And I do kind of agree with when you dial in on one area, you do sense some sort of like locking in effect. Like you get really in tune with it when you challenge it
Yeah,
in ways in a single session. But certainly that takes some time to build up the tolerance to
sure,
that.
sure. Yeah, and also, right, like to the point earlier about, there's only so much. I started to realize that, especially when I'm going through like a stressful time in my life, there really does become this limit to the amount I can tax my body and still feel good the next day. Like to
Mhm.
have it to where I can still be effective in my life the next day. So that will change at different points. It could change at different like hormonal points during the month. It could change because of like stressful things happening in my life. It could be a number of different factors, right? But yeah, so
And you can speak to that for a moment, because this is not something I'm super well versed in, and that is, and it's also kind of valuable for women to hear this. Is How does, that time of month affect your training? I know it will vary person to person, but there's probably a general theme to
You
it.
know, and it's so funny because, like, I wish there was a lot more research in this area, or even just women getting together and having these conversations more often. So a lot of the data that I have comes from my Aura Ring, and like being able to track my heart rate, my heart rate variability, seeing like how well I recovered from the previous day. And so taking in that information and also trying to not take in the information at the same time to like check in with myself and see how I am actually feeling outside of what anything that the ring might be telling me, right? So typically like the first 2 weeks, like it's, I don't know if it's like TMI, but like the first 2 weeks after you would start your period are the best in terms of like recovering and energy wise. And then it's like that second half after you've ovulated that the numbers start to drop down in a not favorable way. So, and then, but it doesn't always, ring true. Like I could still go have a great workout. The recovery might be longer, or, I've often found that there are a couple days like towards the end of that 2 week period where I will actually have like more energy and just be able to like go forever, kind of type thing. But it fluctuates, and I'm sure it's very individual for people too. But I think there's a little bit of like repeatability in terms of like first half, second half.
That's interesting. I guess that makes perfect sense, because if you're thinking about what the body's doing when you're ovulating, it's pulling resources for baby.
Yeah, right. To potentially be this, home for a life. Yeah. Pretty
Well,
cool. I mean, it's pretty wild, right? Like it's amazing what bodies do.
I'm always like amazed and confused.
Right. I know. No, it's fair. Yeah, it's fair.
So, human beings are pretty habitual creatures, and it kind of makes it hard for us to break habits, and especially ones that aren't serving us, but we're kind of tied to. Maybe you've seen this with your clients. How do you help your clients, break maybe self-destructive, unhealthy habits?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really depends like on the client, on their personality, on what the habit happens to be. I think if it's like just adherence to making working out a regular part of their lives, or if it's something more like, maybe they are used to eating a big meal at dinner and their goals don't really align with that. But I mean, to me, I know everybody's different. I've never been somebody who's like you just got to cut it out cold turkey type of person. And depending on what we're talking about, but like, I think the more you can just like lean into the change that you're trying to make, and then also have like healthier replacements for the things that you're trying to lessen, that would be my general, I think, approach to things, just because I feel like we can do really well, if somebody's trying to decrease the amount of food that they're eating for whatever reason. I just think the body tends to revolt when we do too much too fast. And so it's better to have this like gradual progression, or, moving the needle, nudging the needle in a direction, rather than trying to just bust through and like change your whole life and cross your fingers and hope that you're able to sustain that. Like, I just don't think that that's been the experience that I've ever had when I've tried to make a change. And I think for other people, like, it's just, if it's possible to like lean into a different habit,
Yeah. And that seems to be what a lot of the research I've been exposed to demonstrates, is that it's not best to just take it out. You got to substitute it with something maybe that is relatable, but better for you.
Yeah.
It does seem to work best for sure. Although there are those people out there who just go all in hard and it's just their
and that's cool, you know, for the right person, that might be the right approach. Or, you know, when somebody's ready to let go of something, you know, it was so funny. Like, I was just thinking the other day about, I used to chew gum, and in 2017 for Lent, and I'm not even particularly religious, but like for Lent, I decided I was going to stop chewing gum. And I haven't chewed gum since 2017, which is crazy because I was such a regular gum chewer. And it was to the point where I was like, okay, I don't want to chew gum anymore. I just like don't like the chemicals in it. I don't think it's the best thing for me and whatever. But that was one of those things that came from competing, you know, like anytime you would be hungry and you really wanted to eat something, you would chew gum to like give yourself, there are a lot of negative things about competing, but yeah, so when you're ready to let something go, sometimes you can just let it go. But
you never tried those organic, no additive gums? They're kind of nasty though.
You know, I haven't, but I don't even have a desire to even like go back down that rabbit hole. Like, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, when it comes to working with clients, a lot of times, especially people who are inexperienced, when they get into difficult sets, they often want to stop. And sometimes even before it's really challenging, they might have 10 reps left in their abilities, but it's just starting to burn, just starting to get, oh, she disappeared. Little technical difficulties. Hang on, guys.
Oh, there you are. Sorry.
There you are.
New York University was calling me to ask for money.
Nice. Well, maybe later.
So you were saying, though, when you get into a difficult set.
Yeah. Like people, especially who haven't had experience with the uncomfortable sensation that muscles create when, you know, the like hydrogen's building up and that burning sensation happens, people like to stop. And I guess I wonder, like, why do you think that is? And how do you coach people to work through that?
I think it's natural to not want to continue to do something that feels uncomfortable. You know, I think like anything else, sensation is a progression, and learning how to determine which sensations are beneficial and like okay to experience and which ones are assigned to like stop. Because I think a lot of people are afraid sometimes about the pain that they experience during exercise. And I feel like that's always one of those things, like a great conversation, like to have with clients, is because we need to get on board on the same page about like what the different kinds of sensations that can come from exercise. Because I certainly do want you to stop if you're feeling your joint pain, you know, or something that's like a negative type of pain. But also, how can we begin to start to push through some of those like uncomfortable feelings that might be beneficial for our goals? So yeah, like anything else, I think it's a progression. And I think it's natural for people to want to like stop because they're like, oh no, what's happening? Or like, that must mean that I'm ready to stop. But it's funny, right? Because when people are like, can keep going, they're like, wait, why did you stop?
Yeah.
It
becomes a discussion, and then you kind of have to figure out what it is that is going on in their mind.
Yeah. And get them to feel like, to be able to start to differentiate between the different things that they're feeling, and to determine like, oh, that kind of pain is maybe okay, whereas this one, not. And sometimes, you know what, like, I think these things come up even if you've been working out for a long time. You feel something, and sometimes if you've like kind of moved through it and kept kind of like going towards it, but cautiously, like sometimes things actually do feel better if it's, you know. And then there are times when I thought things were going to be okay, and I pushed it a little bit more maybe, and I was like, no, that wasn't the right choice.
Done that so many times,
but it happens.
It's just part of that process of learning what those signals mean, and then next time you have a better take on it, for sure.
Definitely.
You know, I was just training someone right before this, and she's someone who doesn't, she never really worked out. She never was active in her life, and she's trying to make a new venture into adopting exercise into her life. But it's sort of a struggle. Like, she goes through these phases, just not doing it. But now lately she's really putting an effort, even in small ways.
Yeah.
have you seen strategies that work for people in that boat who just never really had any experience and they're trying to figure out how they could adopt exercise as a regular lifestyle habit?
I think with anything else, right? Like I think that that's a normal part of the process. Like I don't know that I've always as much as I've like, let's say, moved, I go through phases with things. I think it's a normal human thing. And while we might like for all of our clients to like and recognize the benefit to being really consistent over a long period of time, um, especially if somebody is just sort of like finding their way with it, I think it's makes sense that they're learning how to make it a priority. They're learning the benefit of doing it consistently. Like sometimes, like I always say, if I've, when I eat like too much or I happen to have a night where I've gone out and I've drank a little more than I would have liked to have, I'm like, this is why I don't do that. It's good for me to do that every once in a while so that I can remind myself, like, that's why I don't do that on a regular basis. And I think similar to exercise, like when you take that break and then you come back, like, why wasn't I here the whole time? Like, why did I take that break? And sometimes it's like those moments where you're like, oh man, no, this is just something I need to do every day, like brushing my teeth, or I take the garbage out regularly, and this is how I take care of my body. But I think it just is part of the progression for people.
Yeah, and although it seems so common sense, it's a good thing for people to hear is that it is a process and that we are human and we all go through these ups and downs. And if you are someone who's trying to adopt this thing, don't, shun yourself or be hard on yourself. Just try every day to see and investigate whether you can move forward just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Is like, we want this to be sustainable for people. Like, so we have to allow for the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs and life challenges and how that affects somebody's ability to stay consistent.
Yeah, 100%. So when you work out, how do you determine whether your training session was successful? And then on top of that, how do you determine it's successful for your clients?
So for me, I generally like to feel like I've pushed myself, but like within a window. Like I don't want to ever feel like I was saying before, like ideally I can still function in the rest of my life. I never want to feel like I've worked so hard that like now I just have to rest for the next 3 days or something. For me, that, but ideally like it's preferred that nothing gets injured. I like to feel like I've connected with the things that I want to connect. So if I'm going in to train like quads or something, like I really want to feel like I felt that area of my body working and doing the work. And like you said before, like I was kind of locked in. I like it when I feel really like in the zone with my workouts. But that doesn't happen every day. And so I also have to allow for like, not every day is going to be like the most energetic or the most locked in or whatever. Sometimes my mind is in different places and I try to, but that doesn't always happen. So, but those are my kind of like my favorite workouts, when I can really feel the thing that I went to do and that I had enough energy and like, I would just stay really focused on that. For my clients, again, like it depends on what their goals are. Like I want them to have a good experience. I want them to feel ideally better than when they came in, if they're dealing with something, whether it's some kind of stress or a body issue or something. Like I want them to feel like we moved in an appropriate way for what they were experiencing on that day. I want them to have fun if that's possible, like I want them to enjoy their time. But I also want their body. I mean, like that's my ultimate goal, is that their body feels good and that they are getting stronger in the way that they want and need to be strong.
Yeah. And you touched on something that's super important for people, is that they enjoy the process. So if they don't, that really deters them from continuing and also might shunt their success.
Yeah. I mean, like I want it to be challenging. So I want them to have moments where if it's right for them and on that day, like to be fighting a little bit for like
those last reps or something, or but I want them to be able to have like a deeper connection to their bodies and feel like they are like the strongest version of themselves.
Mm-hmm. And that is what often happens after a good workout. You just feel like rock solid. It's the
best. I think that's right. Like that's so great when that happens. And I think that's what keeps me returning to exercise. So
yeah. It's like an immediate effect, like you just took a drug.
Yeah.
What methods of tracking have you found to be useful for people so that they can see progress and stay motivated based on that?
That's a great question. I think, again, like, I feel like it's very specific and specific to somebody's goals, right? Like if they have a goal of getting stronger, then tracking their progress with a weight might be helpful. If they had a body composition goal, then maybe doing some kind of regular, body fat testing, or having them, it doesn't have to be anything really formal, but like, how are they feeling? Are their clothes fitting? If somebody had a goal of like having more balance, or like being able to balance in a more efficient, easier manner, like, are they feeling like that's happened, that they're achieving that throughout their life, and like in the areas that they need to? Are there sometimes there's these things, like it can be very specific, like a number, but I think at least for the people that I work with, the majority of them, it's more of like, how easily could I do my daily tasks? How easy was it for me to get up off the floor, or hold my grandchild, or climb this set of stairs, or I stepped off the curb funny, but I was able to catch myself, So it really, I think, depends on the person. I don't have a lot of people that I'm training right now, although I do have a few, but like that, where their real goal is really like a very objective, like, I want to lift this amount of weight by this day, or I want to be, I'm getting ready for a competition and I need to be this % body fat, or something like that.
Yeah. So I guess this, in a way, this ties into what we first talked about, which is goal setting. And I think it's be personality based, because if you're someone who needs to see progress in a more fashion, then it's probably going to be really valuable for you to have some clear cut goals. Where if you're someone more okay with just sensing it in your body and being on a standpoint, maybe the goal setting isn't as big of a thing.
Right.
Everybody's unique, and that's why you keep saying that it varies person to person.
I know, and I feel like I'm sorry, but it is true. It's so true.
Like, if anyone doesn't say that, they probably are missing some things. But when working with people, everyone has roadblocks and issues and hurdles that they have to get through when they're trying to progress towards their goals. And what kind of roadblocks have you seen, and how do you help people pass that? Maybe example of one or two.
So I think probably the thing that comes up the most is like patience. I think if somebody does have like a very specific goal, or just like sometimes I wish that we could just take all the numbers off of the weights, because like people can get very fixated on that, and those things take time. Getting stronger can take time. I mean, like, depending on the specific goal, but it's not something that happens overnight. And I think sometimes calming people down and like getting them to focus on something, I mean, as much as counterintuitive as that could sound, yes, we have this primary goal, but like, we got to work towards that and put some other things that are happening more immediately than maybe upfront, and like acknowledge the things that are going well, and the things that are the effort that you are putting into this. So like those things will happen in the time that they're going to happen. And all you can do right now is follow these processes, these steps, and keep after it in a very consistent manner in your attempt on your journey to getting to that goal,
Yeah, I mean, that's why you rightfully and correctly had me change the title.
Well, it had just come up recently where I was just like, I just feel like that's so much of the conversation that I end up having with people is kind of this, like, because like we've been saying, ideally this exercise thing is something that we that we do for the rest of our lives in some form or fashion. And if that's the case, then we can throw ourselves back by trying to do too much too fast. We can get injured that way. We can, like, you know, you can lose weight quickly, but like, I don't know that that's what you really want to do to your body, because you're setting yourself up then for a harder process in the future. So I understand people's desire. I think oftentimes when people come to training or come back to the gym after a period off, it's because they're feeling unhappy with something about themselves, whether they've gained weight or they don't look the way that they want to look. And so it's so much, you know, okay, I acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge what they're feeling for sure. But also, how do we have that, but like then still keep with the same routine, keep that consistency once these like feelings of like, you know, upset or anger or like disgust or something, like once those settle down, I still need you to want to come to the gym after that. I still need you to want to stay on track if you really want that goal, you know. People can be motivated by their disgust or their discomfort, I guess is a better way to say that. But that can be a good like way to get into the gym. But then how do we like do the things we actually need to do if that's really what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, and that's why you were saying, in a way, having micro goals along the way to the main one is so helpful. When you said that if someone loses weight fast, it might work, but there might be some negative side effects to that. Could you elaborate, like what you mean by that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. That's the problem that I see with like weighing yourself on the scale. It's not to say that that can't be something that's good to track for some people, and especially if it doesn't like mess with their mind or anything. But it's one narrow piece of data. It doesn't tell the whole story about what's going on. So if you want to just lose weight, like that doesn't differentiate between, well, do you want to lose body fat or do you want to lose muscle? Because I don't think you want to lose muscle, and I think what you're saying is you want to lose body fat, but that's a different like, that's not just like, let's lose weight. Like, as long as I hit this number on the scale, then I'm good. And so like, I really, you know, and I think for women that can be, they might have a number in their mind. I mean, men and women, I don't mean to just like, stereotype that way, but, I just think it's important to know that that number is, and just like just losing weight doesn't really tell the whole picture, and is actually like a really poor indicator maybe. I mean, it could just mean that you didn't eat as much food that day, or you didn't drink enough water. So now you're dehydrated, you're starving, but the number on the scale went down. It's like a self-defeating thing that's just gonna lower your metabolism and make it harder to actually decrease body fat.
Yeah, I mean, like in a way, starving yourself might damage your metabolic rate. And
absolutely. I think our bodies are like really, really smart, you know, and they are really good at adjusting when it senses any kind of starvation or stress, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I can attest to this because I fast regularly and change my macro ratios oftentimes, and I can lose weight like 6 pounds in a day sometimes, and then come gain back 8 another day.
There's just going to be a lot of fluctuation, I think, right? Like if you have a good amount of muscle, like there can be water fluctuations and all kinds of things happening. Yeah.
This lends into the question I had. Oftentimes I hear from women that they don't want to lift weights because they're going to get bulky, and they have fear around lifting weights because they don't want to be buff. And I guess I wonder what your perspective is on how this might hurt their ability to obtain optimal health, get leaner, and ultimately create like a sexy physique.
You know, so I've really gone back and forth about this, like over some time. Because I do think that there is this idea that a lot of women have that they will put on muscle and look manly, or they will be too bulky, or, and I think generally speaking, like that's couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, yes, you can add muscle and you will potentially like the shape of your body better. You know, I think oftentimes the pictures that we have in our head of like muscular women are like women who are bodybuilders. And you're seeing people who are taking steroids. You're seeing people who are training a lot. You know, it's not something that happened overnight. They didn't just like start lifting weights a month ago and now they look like that. So I think that is a lot of like misperception about like what adding weights. I think that's changing a bit though. I think there are more women that are more open to lifting weights than there were before. But I also really feel like, you know, I never want to discount what a woman is feeling about her body, because I think women are very intuitive. And I think that I always want to like respect where somebody's coming from. I think unfortunately, like our society has sort of, it puts a lot of pressure on women to look certain ways and to fit into certain molds. And so I really like want to try to hear where they're coming from and talk with them about like their fears, because I want to know kind of like where it's coming from. Is it trying to fit into some kind of like societal standard? And, you know, I just think that there's a bigger conversation about the fear behind it. Yes, I think it's like, sure, maybe you don't want to look like the woman on the stage, but I think for most women, they know that that's not going to happen immediately, and that there would be a way, like if they did start to look too bulky for themselves and their taste, they could just stop lifting and it would generally go away. I mean, you and I both know how hard it is to put on muscle, which is the funny part of it, right? Like, I've certainly, like, I think kind of maxed out a lot of the things that I can do weight wise. Like I wanted to try to lift as much weight as possible and like get as big as possible. And which is just like a joke, because, you know, you put me next to somebody and I'm still never going to I'll still look pretty scrawny. So, but I also want to respect where women are coming from. And like, and again, maybe it's one of those progression things where it's not something that they're going to start doing 6 days a week, but maybe they're adding in a little bit at a time and like seeing like, oh no, this actually, I do feel better. I feel stronger. I feel like I actually look better. I feel better. I have more energy to do things. My mood is improved. Hormonally, things are better for me. I mean, there's a lot of benefits. So, but yeah, I think it's a big topic. Like it's not an easy answer.
No question. It's culturally intertwined, and it's definitely a complex situation. But in your opinion, do you think resistance training is a really important staple in a woman's ability?
I think it's hugely important. I think for bone health, you know, there's a quote that I just go back to where it's like, there has never been a 90-year-old who has said, I wish I didn't have this much muscle. And I think that it's like a losing game. You know, we get older and it's everything we can do to maintain the amount of muscle that we have. So the more you can work on building up some good reserves as soon as you can, I think it's really important. And especially for women with osteoporosis and, you know, bone health and just being able to be independent for as long as possible. I think it's extremely beneficial. Eric, are you there?
Back.
Oh, there you are. I lost you.
Sorry about that, everybody. You cut out right as you were starting, so maybe you could just.
I don't know where I left off, but I do think it's extremely beneficial. Did you hear any of my response or no?
Come on. Okay. Yeah, it's you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but it seems to be working now.
Okay.
All right. So let's just change directions here. I want to just briefly touch on recovery because, it's an often overlooked thing. Everybody just wants to work, especially when they're in this. But how important is recovery in all this? And do you have specific strategies that you find work well for you and for your clients?
Yes, I do think it's really important. When I was younger, did not think it was that. I mean, I really was definitely I want to work out every day. It was hard not to work out. I don't necessarily feel that way anymore. I definitely try to have lower energy, days when I expend less energy and days when I expend more energy. And if I knew I was going to have a hard workout one day, I would try then to have at least a lighter workout the next day, or to lay low, just not really work out. But yeah, so I try to be mindful of that personally about balancing things out. For clients, again, I really think it depends. I have people who are very type A and want to do something every day. And so again, it's varying up what they're doing and having lighter days and maybe heavier days or more strenuous days. But I do want to, one of the things that I think is really beneficial for people, which is hard when you're in the mode of I just want to work out all the time, to actually make progress. I think it's actually really beneficial to get rest. It's so important to get enough sleep. It's so important to have a day where you can recover. Again, talking about that whole sustainability thing, if this is something that we're going to do and we want our bodies to be able to function well for a long period of time, it's important that we also give them the rest that they need.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be difficult sometimes when you really just want to get after something. But
sure, and right, when you're really excited about the goals you have, you just want to keep working towards that. But in the long run, I have found, I think that it's good to take some time off.
Sure. Do you implement any I call it biohacks, but do you do cold showers, sauna, things of that nature?
I don't so much. If I had a sauna, I would definitely do that. I am not, I actually have something that it's called Raynaud's syndrome, where it's called being allergic to the cold is the tagline for it. So the idea of any kind of cold exposure, it's something that I might, again, want to very slowly progress into, because I know it has a lot of benefits, but I also have a lot of fear behind being cold. So
Is that break out in hives? Because I had a friend in high school who had that, and he would break out in hives when he was in the cold.
So all the blood runs out of my fingers, and my fingers get really white, my fingers and toes. And I have to kind of get them under hot water for it to come back to the tips. Oh. So it just when I can feel that, because it still start to tingle and it just feels very uncomfortable. And it happens not even necessarily when it's very cold outside, but it's a particular climate, in LA, it happens a lot to me in LA, where it's that moist kind of on the ocean, mid 60s or 50s. It's just very uncomfortable to me. So.
Really not working well. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I guess my Wi-Fi is not operating. Yeah, that sounds awful. And you're on the East Coast, so it's cold over there.
Yeah, but I try to be really I try to be mindful. As soon as it's starting to come on, I try to avoid it and get into warmer climate.
You're muted. Okay. All right. So you're kind of frozen again.
Oh,
we're coming near the end.
I can hear you.
Okay, we're coming near the end. I apologize for all this Wi-Fi issue. I'm gonna have to fix this next time. Just a couple more questions. I just wanted to quickly go over nutritional strategies, supplementation. How much importance do you put on that with your results with your clients? Do you find that something you really need to pay attention to?
So I really try to encourage people to eat as nutritiously as possible. I know that's not always possible for people, but that's would be my first choice, would be for people to just be eating as nutritiously and well for their specific goals. I don't really encourage any particular kind of supplementation unless somebody like really has a case for why they want to take something, and then we can explore and research that together about whether that could be beneficial for them. I know that there are definitely reputable companies, and then I think there are a lot that are not so reputable. So I don't ever like to assume or I wouldn't, without even like working with somebody, be like, you need to take this, this, and this. Like I'm pretty, I don't want to say anti-supplement, but like it's just definitely not my first primary choice.
What's nutritious eating look like in your mind?
Oh my, I think it's a balance. I mean, I think it's really a balance. I think, again, some people might have like specific issues for where they can't eat a certain type of food. Completely understand that. But I think ideally like a blend of protein, carbohydrates, and fats with, a nice variety of vegetables and some fruit here and there. And I like the balanced approach. Again, in terms of sustainability, I know people are very much into like keto or caveman or low carb. And, I think playing, like if you have a desire to play around and you're a healthy individual and that will work well for, that's okay for your system. I think it can be fun. It can be like a fun little experiment. Anytime you're working to like change up a little something and just to see how that fits into your life, I think it can be interesting. But generally speaking, I just would encourage something that's sort of balanced for most people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just basically a whole foods diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Like least processed as possible, but also allowing for the fact that we're human and they're going to be.
You might want a pizza one day or something.
And I think that should be okay. I don't think we should like have to go off the deep end.
Right. And but like you're saying, it's okay to try out some of these dietary strategies to see how they work with you. But
you might find that something feels really good to your body, like that you really, and it works really well with your lifestyle, or, that you didn't know you had an allergy to something, but like or sensitivity to something, but you take it out and you realize, I think it's interesting to play around with all those things. So.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe long-term, you need to figure out what thing will work for you. So diving into certain things and then customizing it. It's a useful strategy. If someone might be struggling to build muscle, get stronger, and maybe they're in the exercise process, do you have some tips for those people and what they might be able to do or think about to enhance their experience and their results?
I think making sure you're getting enough sleep is really important. Making sure that your stress level is as low as it possibly can be. I think if you're not eating it, checking in to see how much protein you're getting. Maybe changing up some of the variables to make it so that you're eating a little bit more protein than you were before, possibly. I always just love really feeling the connection to my muscles. I think sometimes if somebody is already in the exercise process, then maybe they're already really doing everything really appropriately and well. But I think always checking in with like form to make sure that you're really hitting things in the way that you want to be hitting, and can be helpful too.
Yeah. Execution is a big thing.
Yeah.
Sure you're getting the right stress in the right place.
Oh, that's not funny. It's just funny because
that was weird. You're a muscle activation person. So, my center of what I work with for people is mostly people with dysfunction, pain issues. If someone is dealing with a chronic pain or it seems muscular in origin, what do you do, and what things do you suggest people try? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, that can be really tricky. And again, it's one of those places where encouraging patience, I think, is important, because that can be a very challenging thing sometimes or it can take a little while to recover from something like that. But like I try to find ways that they can move and that are not painful. Isometrics, I think, can be very helpful. Obviously, like having MAT as a tool is beneficial. But I try to find planes that people can move in where they are not feeling the issue, the injury, while we're still maybe contracting and connecting to other muscles that are around that joint, or in a way that makes sense or is responsible.
Yeah, and I've seen that with my clients and myself. Is you might find there's pain in an exercise in a particular part of the motion. You might be able to work around it and make it pain free, and then over time that might go away entirely. So you don't have to avoid.
Yeah, I try to tease out like what is available on a day, and because like to your point, like I think sometimes finding different ways to move, it will actually help to lessen the discomfort and the pain over time.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, actually. Couple personal questions. I'm curious, if you were to go back in time and speak to yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to trust myself more. I would tell myself to put other people on mute regularly so that I can really hear my own inner voice much more clearly, and take time to be alone to really like connect with that voice.
That's good advice. If you could go back in time and meet one person dead or alive, who would you meet?
That was a tricky one because I want to say my grandparents, even though I've already met them. I just like want to see them again. But I also, James Baldwin was the other one. I really appreciate his voice. I think he has a lot to say, and I just always feel like when I hear him speak that he speaks to parts of the population that don't have a voice, and I want to know more about that.
Who's that?
He's a poet, a Black man who was an activist, commentator on civil rights issues. He's passed away, but it was like a literary voice in like the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Gotcha. One more. What's something that you're really fascinated with right now?
I have to say ballet, because that's really become my, it's something that I was fascinated with in my youth, and have just really sort of like reawoken that. I go through phases with it, times when I become really passionate about it, and then it kind of takes a back seat because like I have to do life. But I'm in a mode right now where I'm feeling very passionate and fascinated with it, and just trying to take in all the things I can related to it. So
it's super difficult and hard. It's very hard in the body, right?
It's really, but it's so interesting. It's sure it can be, but there are good ways to do it, and like, or better ways to do it than other ways. Like there's certainly, when you're little, there's like everybody forces themselves into positions, even if they're kind of told not to do that, because it's not going to be good long-term. So it definitely can be very hard on your body, but I think, and it's all very much like exploring very end range things, like everything is like the most hip flexion, the most hip extension, the most external rotation, the most spinal extension. I mean, it's all of these like end range things, which is very challenging. Yeah. But also like it's that, and it's, I guess the same way with like the process of exercise, like it's something you have to do on a consistent basis to start to see progress. Because it is so challenging, but you get like little glimmers of like, oh, that feels better today, or like I can do that better than I could yesterday. And it's like very, it keeps pushing you forward. So
cool. Yeah. That's definitely not something I'm going to be doing.
You never know.
So I don't know this, but do you do online consulting or anything like that?
I do offer virtual training, online consulting. Mm-hmm. If people are interested, they could reach out to me at meredith@meredithmack.com. My website is under construction right now, though, so they'd have to either email me, or I'm on Instagram, Meredith_Mack.
Okay, awesome. So if anybody is interested in reaching out, you have that info. Hey, look, I really appreciate you coming in and offering all this wisdom, and it was really fun.
I had a
So,
great time. Thanks so much for having me on.
yeah, you're very welcome. Maybe we'll run into each other at another MAT class in the future.
I'd love that. That'd be great.
All right. Well, you have a great weekend, and
You too.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Take care.